It wasn't a crime. It wasn't even intentional. Just one ordinary choice made on an ordinary day. But years later, he would replay that moment over and over, wondering how something so small could quietly dismantle an entire life. Daniel Harper had always believed his life was predictable. Not perfect, just steady. He was the kind of man who woke up before his alarm, drank his coffee black, and followed the same route to work every morning without thinking about it. That routine gave him comfort. It made the world feel manageable. On the morning everything began to change, Daniel stood in his kitchen staring at the clock above the stove. 7:42 a.m. He was running late. "Daniel, you're going to miss breakfast again," his wife, Emily Harper, said gently from behind him. He turned and smiled, that familiar apologetic smile he always gave her when time slipped away. "I know. I'll make it up to you tonight. Promise." Emily didn't answer right away. She was holding their daughter Lily on her hip, brushing the toddler's hair with her fingers. Lily giggled, completely unaware of time, responsibilities, or the fragile balance of adult life. "You always promise," Emily said quietly, not accusing, just tired. Daniel kissed Lily's forehead, then Emily's cheek. "Tonight," he repeated, grabbing his jacket. "I love you." "I love you too," Emily replied, but her voice followed him with a weight he didn't notice as he stepped out the door. The sky was overcast, the kind of gray morning that made the city feel slower than usual. Traffic was heavier than normal. Daniel drummed his fingers against the steering wheel, glancing at his phone on the passenger seat. A message notification lit up the screen. His supervisor asking if he was close. "I'll be there in 10, Daniel muttered, even though he knew it was a lie. At the next intersection, the light turned yellow. Daniel hesitated. Normally he would stop. He was cautious by nature. But something in him calculated quickly. If he stopped now, he'd lose another minute. Another mark against him at work. Another disappointed look from his boss. He pressed the gas. The light turned red as he crossed. Nothing happened. No crash. No sirens. No dramatic moment. Just a small decision made in a rush, already forgotten as he merged into traffic. Daniel arrived at work breathless but relieved. The day passed like any other. Emails, meetings, forced smiles. By evening, he had almost forgotten the yellow light altogether. Until 2 weeks later, when a white envelope arrived in the mail. Daniel sat at the kitchen table, opening it casually while Emily prepared dinner. The smell of garlic and onions filled the room. "What is it?" Emily asked. "Probably junk," Daniel said, unfolding the paper. His face changed. Emily noticed immediately. "Daniel, it's a traffic violation," he said slowly. "Red light camera." Emily exhaled. "That's it." "Yeah, just a fine." He laughed awkwardly. "Guess they finally got me." "How much?" He looked down. $300. "And points on my license." Emily frowned but nodded. "We'll manage." Daniel nodded too, but something inside him tightened. He paid the fine that night, clicked through the confirmation screen, and told himself it was done. It wasn't. 3 months later, Daniel was called into his supervisor's office. "Daniel," Mark Wilson said, folding his hands on the desk. "You've been a solid employee. But there's something we need to discuss." Daniel sat straighter. "Okay." "Our company insurance reviewed employee driving records," Mark continued. "Your position requires occasional client transport. With points on your license, we're limited." Daniel blinked. I didn't think." "We're not letting you go," Mark said quickly. "But we're moving you to a different role. Lower pay. No travel." Daniel felt the room tilt slightly. "How much lower?" Mark named the number. Daniel nodded, his mouth dry. "I understand." He drove home in silence that evening, the radio off, the city lights blurring past. When he told Emily, she didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. She just sat down heavily on the couch. "We'll adjust," she said after a long pause. Daniel watched her shoulders slump and felt something crack inside his chest. Weeks turned into months. The reduced income meant sacrifices. Cancelled plans, smaller groceries, quiet arguments whispered after Lily went to sleep. Daniel started picking up extra shifts driving for a delivery app, trying to make up the difference. He told himself it was temporary. Then one night, exhausted and rushing again, he missed a stop sign. This time there was no camera. There was a car. The collision wasn't violent, but it was enough. Enough to send paperwork through insurance. Enough to draw attention. Enough to suspend his license pending review. Daniel sat on the curb that night, his hands shaking as he stared at the cracked bumper. All he could think was, it was just a second. Just 1 second. And somehow, that second kept expanding, swallowing everything. Daniel didn't sleep that night. He lay on his back, staring at the ceiling, listening to Emily's breathing beside him. Every sound felt louder in the dark. The hum of the refrigerator, a car passing outside, the quiet ticking of the clock in the hallway. His license suspension notice sat folded in his jacket pocket on the chair across the room. He hadn't shown Emily yet. In the morning, he watched her pour cereal for Lily, smiling softly as their daughter spilled milk everywhere. "Daddy," Lily said, holding up her spoon proudly. "I made a lake." Daniel forced a smile. "You sure did." Emily glanced at him. "You okay?" "You barely slept." "Just tired," he said quickly. The lie tasted bitter. By noon, Daniel was sitting alone in his car outside the apartment, gripping the steering wheel even though he wasn't going anywhere. His phone buzzed with notifications, delivery app reminders now useless. He finally told Emily that evening. Her face didn't change at first. Then she closed her eyes. "How long?" she asked. 3 months, Daniel said. "Maybe more." Emily sat down slowly. "So, no delivery work. No driving for anything." "No." Silence filled the room. "We'll figure it out," Emily said eventually, but her voice trembled. "We always do." Daniel nodded, shame burning behind his eyes. The next weeks were brutal in quiet ways. Daniel walked everywhere. Job interviews, grocery stores, the bus stop when he could afford the fare. Rejections piled up politely. "We're looking for someone with more flexibility. We'll keep your resume on file." At night, Daniel lay awake replaying the red light, the stop sign, the moments that felt insignificant at the time but now echoed endlessly. Emily picked up extra hours at the clinic. She came home exhausted, her smile thinner each day. One night, after Lily had fallen asleep, Emily finally broke. "I'm scared," she said, sitting at the edge of the bed. Daniel swallowed. "I know. What if this doesn't end?" she whispered. "What if this is just how it is now?" He didn't have an answer. The breaking point came 6 months later. Their savings were gone. Rent was overdue. Daniel stood in the living room holding a final notice letter, his hands numb. "I failed you," he said quietly. Emily looked at him, tears in her eyes. "You made a mistake," she said. "One mistake." "It keeps happening," Daniel said. "Because I rush. 'Cause I don't stop." "I didn't stop." Emily reached for his hand. "Then stop now." Those words stayed with him. The next morning, Daniel did something he hadn't done in years. He slowed down. Not just physically but mentally. He enrolled in a driver safety course, even though his license was still suspended. He attended free financial counseling sessions. He stopped chasing quick fixes. Months passed. Painfully. Slowly. But things began to shift. Community center offered Daniel part-time work within walking distance. It wasn't much, but it was honest. Emily smiled again. Not often, but sometimes. When Daniel finally got his license reinstated, he sat in the driver's seat for a long time before turning the key. At the first yellow light he stopped. Years later, Daniel stood at the same intersection where it all began. The city had changed. New buildings, fresh paint, brighter signs, but the traffic light was the same. Red, yellow, green. Lily sat in the back seat now, No longer a toddler but a thoughtful child staring out the window. "Dad," she said, "why do you always stop so early?" Daniel smiled softly. "Because I learned something the hard way." Emily reached over and squeezed his hand. Life hadn't returned to what it was before. It became something different, something earned. Daniel worked as a safety instructor now, teaching teenagers and adults about the weight of small choices. He never dramatized his story. He just told the truth. 1 second, he would say, can follow you for years. The light turned green. Daniel waited a beat longer than necessary. Then he drove forward, carefully, deliberately, aware.